There are places in this world that are not on Earth. There are no signs pointing the way, no coordinates to find them. And yet, many of us spend much of our lives trapped in them. They are invisible places, subtle constructions of the mind, where we forget who we are. Alan Watts once said that life is a dance we have forgotten we're dancing, and perhaps that's what happens when we stay too long in these inner spaces of the soul that pull us away from presence. Have you ever felt that? As if you were living yet somehow absent from yourself, surrounded by people yet alone, playing roles yet without meaning. These places have no walls, but they have habits. They have no guards, but they have voices that tell us what to be, what to silence, what to hide. And little by little, we stop hearing the only voice that truly matters, our own. In this video, we'll walk together through 7 of these invisible territories, 7 states of consciousness that quietly destroy your true self. But this is not a journey of guilt. It is a return to clarity. Because when you recognize them, something within you awakens, the presence that observes, the being that remembers. As you listen, take a deep breath. Don't search for answers. Simply observe gently which of these places your soul has been inhabiting lately. Because realizing where you are is already the first step toward coming home. Chapter 1. The mirror that only shows the same. There is a place within the mind where everything feels far too familiar. Every opinion we hear confirms what we already think. Every conversation reinforces what we already believe. It seems like a safe space, comfortable, predictable, free of friction. But comfort, when it turns into habit, can become a subtle kind of prison. Alan Watts once said, "A man does not grow by repeating certainties, but by being surprised by what he does not understand." And yet, many of us inhabit this inner hall of mirrors where nothing new can enter. It is the territory of confirmation, where the ego feels validated, but the soul is forgotten. Have you noticed how social media, certain groups, and even some friendships keep us trapped in that constant reflection of ourselves? It's a mirror that doesn't reflect the face, but the bubble we've built. At first it seems harmless, but the longer we stay there, the more rigid the mind becomes, and fear begins to grow. Fear of thinking differently, fear of questioning, fear of being contradicted. Without realizing it, we trade freedom for the artificial harmony of a world without contrast. And in that world, truth stops being discovered and starts being manufactured. Leaving that place doesn't mean declaring war on other people's opinions. It means learning to listen without defending yourself, to hear without needing to agree. It's allowing difference to teach you something about what you have not yet become. Because an awakened mind does not seek echo, it seeks expansion. It knows that discomfort is the fertile ground of growth and that a living soul needs edges, encounters that challenge it. Try something simple in the coming days. Listen to someone you would normally disagree with, without the impulse to correct them, just to observe what arises within you. You might discover that the mind is not a fortress, but a garden, and that the diversity of ideas is the wind that keeps that garden alive. The danger of the mirror is not in reflecting, but in convincing us that nothing exists beyond the reflection. When you break the mirror, what appears is not the enemy. It's the world, vast, unpredictable, and you, whole, for the very first time. Chapter 2. The stage of the world. There is a kind of fatigue that doesn't come from the body, but from the soul. It's the exhaustion of sustaining a character, of waking up every day and putting on a mask that no longer fits your face, of smiling when your chest aches, of appearing calm while something inside you screams. We live in the great theater of the world, and without realizing it, we become actors in a play we never chose to perform. Alan Watts once said, "Life is only a game, but the trouble is that we forget we're playing it. And when we forget the game, the mask sticks to the skin. the role becomes identity, and spontaneity, the breath of the spirit, dies, suffocated by the need to appear. On this stage, applause becomes nourishment. We want to be seen, accepted, admired, but approval is a treacherous currency. It buys our obedience. And so, the person who seeks acceptance loses touch with their truth. They become a collection of versions, one for work, another for friends, another for the spiritual world, and none of them hold their whole being. But there comes a moment, quiet and intimate, when the soul whispers, "I don't want to act anymore." And that is the beginning of the return. Because authenticity is not born from a heroic act, but from a small surrender, the courage to be simple again. Perhaps that means laughing only when something is truly funny, not when it's convenient. Perhaps it means saying no, even when the world expects your yes. Or perhaps it's simply allowing yourself to be silent without needing to impress anyone. Try a small experiment. Notice how many times a day you say something just to maintain the role the world has given you. And in silence, ask yourself, who is speaking right now? My being or my character? Liberation is not about abandoning the stage. It's about remembering that you are both the actor and the observer, that behind every role there is an untouched, serene presence that never needed applause. When you discover this, the stage remains. But now life returns to being a dance, not a performance, and dancing is what you have always known how to do. Chapter 3. The silence that hurts and the noise that numbs. There are two ways to lose yourself from your own center. One is by staying silent for too long. The other is by talking without stopping. And curiously, both are born from the same fear. The fear of hearing what silence has to say. The silence that hurts is the one that swallows truths. It's the silence of a home where no one speaks about what they truly feel, where pain hides behind a quiet, "I'm fine." It's the silence of relationships where honesty has become dangerous. In that kind of silence, the soul learns to whisper only within itself until it becomes convinced that to feel is a weakness. But silencing what hurts doesn't erase what exists. It only pushes it into the body, where it turns into tension, anxiety, and nights that stretch too long. On the other side lies the noise that numbs. The constant hum of notifications, of haste, of external voices that never stop talking. It's the mind running from one distraction to another, afraid of the moment when there's nothing left to fill the emptiness. Because when the sound fades, what appears is the void, and for those who have forgotten their own essence, the void feels unbearable. Alan Watts once said, "Music is beautiful because of the silence between the notes." Perhaps we've forgotten that. We try to play the melody of life without pauses, without space, but wisdom is not born from noise nor from repressed silence. It blooms in the space between them, where listening happens. Try this. For a moment, turn everything off. No music, no voice, no intention to meditate. Just be. Observe the discomfort, the restlessness, and notice that it too is a part of you. Breathe through it. Little by little, the noise quiets and the silence changes its tone. From hostile, it becomes fertile. You begin to hear something that was never coming from the outside. A soft, ancient voice that may have waited a lifetime to be heard. That is true silence, not the kind that suffocates, but the kind that reveals. And when you learn to dwell in that space, the world stops being noise and becomes rhythm, and you, at last, become the listener of your own soul. Chapter 4. The Garden of Comparison. There is a garden within each of us. In it, some flowers bloom early, others take longer to open. Some stand tall and radiant, others are discreet, with a fragrance almost invisible. But somewhere along the path, we forget that every flower has its own rhythm, and we begin to measure the whole garden with a single ruler. That's how we enter the territory of comparison. Alan Watts once said, "When we try to be better than others, we forget to be what we are." And that's exactly what comparison does. It turns life into a race, joy into competition, and self-love into statistics. We spend our days gazing at the neighbor's garden, their success, their appearance, their spirituality, their shine, and we begin to doubt the beauty of what's growing within us. The mind becomes a scorekeeper of lacks. I should be further ahead. I should have more. I should be different. And so we stop living what we have in order to chase what's missing. But the truth is, nothing blooms by comparison. The rose doesn't envy the sunflower. The oak doesn't rush the seed. Every being expresses a unique form of the same mystery. And that's precisely why life is beautiful, because it is diverse, imperfect, and alive. The problem with comparison is that it keeps us away from the present. While we look at others, we abandon the soil of the now, the only place where something real can grow. The soul becomes weary, trying to win a race that never began. Try something simple. When you feel comparison arise, close your eyes and imagine your inner garden. See what is blooming there, even if quietly. Gratitude is the sunlight that makes every flower grow. And when you return to tending your own soil, something shifts. Time slows down, the heaviness dissolves, and the simple act of existing becomes enough again. There is no prize waiting at the end of the path, only the discovery that the path itself was the prize all along. When you stop measuring, you begin to see, and when you begin to see, you realize you were never behind anyone. You were always exactly where your soul needed to be. Chapter 5. The place where you say yes when you want to say no. There is a secret place where the soul becomes exhausted, the space where the lips agree but the heart protests. There are no sirens, no visible tragedy, only a succession of small yeses that, when added up, cost far too much. It is the daily act of self-betrayal, accepting invitations when the body asks for rest, sustaining relationships that have already ended inside, agreeing with ideas that don't resonate, carrying tasks that aren't ours to bear. On the outside, it looks mature, responsible, even admirable. On the inside, a distance from the self grows wider. Alan Watts reminds us with his lucid gentleness that life has flavor only when there is harmony between the gesture and the source of the gesture, when doing arises from being. The opposite of that is performing on someone else's stage, obeying scripts we never signed. The price? A heavy fatigue, a nameless irritation, a Sunday night that feels like stone, the famous Sunday test. When the week approaches and your chest sinks, it's a sign of misalignment. How do you leave that place? Start with the body, the silent oracle. Before responding, pause for 3 breaths and ask, does my chest expand or contract? Is there warmth in my face? Does my stomach tighten? The body doesn't lie. If there's contraction, try using a bridge phrase. Can I get back to you tomorrow? That small pause gives the decision back to the self instead of the conditioned reflex. Also, create a yes-no map. For 1 week, write down 3 times you said yes when you meant no, and 3 honest no's you managed to say. Record the physical effect of each. By the end, you'll see that saying no doesn't break the world. It simply organizes your inner garden. Set gentle boundaries. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a living edge. Say, I'd love to help, but today I need to rest. I like you, and I need to go slow. I can contribute as long as... Firmness doesn't exclude tenderness. In fact, tenderness is the most mature form of firmness. And finally, a simple ritual, the daily vow of consonance. In the morning, ask yourself, what is the smallest act that honors my truth today? It might be drinking water when you wake up, walking for 15 minutes, or refusing a request that drains your energy. Small but sacred. Integrity is built in inches. Remember, choosing yourself is not selfishness, it's soul hygiene. Those who overflow from within give better. Those who abandon themselves give crumbs. If this chapter touched something within you, save the video as a reminder and share in the comments one loving no you've decided to practice this week. The soul will thank you. Chapter 6. The Underground of the Soul, the Subterranean Garden of Shadows. Beneath the house of our consciousness lies a living underground. Many call it a basement. Here we'll call it the subterranean garden. There rest, like unseen seeds, all that we have judged unworthy: anger, jealousy, envy, fear, vanity, the desire to control. They are not monsters. They are raw forces, unpolished energies. When we lock them away, they don't die. They grow in the dark and sprout crooked on the surface in the most inconvenient moments. The sudden outburst, the sharp criticism, the sneaky self-saboteur, they are roots searching for light. Jung called this the shadow. Watts, in his own way, pointed out that resisting what is creates friction with life itself. Integration doesn't happen through war, but through curious closeness. To descend into the underground is not to drown in drama. It is to light a lantern. Try a guided descent. Sit with your spine straight, hands over your abdomen. Inhale for a count of 4, exhale for 6. Visualize a simple wooden staircase leading to a garden beneath your house. Down below, there is a table, a lit candle, and a notebook. Invite an emotion you usually reject, for example, anger. See it arriving not as an enemy, but as a tired child. Ask it, what are you trying to protect when you appear? At what moment do I abandon myself, and you have to shout for me, write freely without censorship? When finished, thank it, and return it to the care of the candle's light, as one tends a plant that needs pruning and sun, not locks and chains. Transmutation is practical alchemy. Anger can become a boundary. I exist and I take up space. Sadness can become compassion. I know how it hurts, that's why I hold others. Envy can become direction. What I admire in another points to a desire of my own. No emotion is a mistake. The only mistake is exile. Create a shadow journal. Once a week, name a behavior you judge in yourself. Next to it, write the protective function it tried to serve. Finally, propose a new gesture to fulfill that same function in a more conscious way. Example: I procrastinated. Function: to avoid criticism. New gesture: deliver a minimal version today and refine it tomorrow. In this way, the shadow gains a voice and loses control. To seal the process, try a reconciliation ritual. Light a candle and softly say, "Nothing within me needs to be destroyed. Everything needs to be known." Remain for 2 minutes in that fertile silence. When the light of the underground meets the light of the surface, you don't become perfect, you become whole. And wholeness is the only soil where peace grows deep roots. Conclusion: the door was always open. At the end of this journey, we realize something Alan Watts always knew. There is no out there where freedom awaits us. What imprisons and what liberates both exist within. The 7 dangerous places, the mirror, the stage, the silence, the noise, the garden of comparison, self-betrayal, and the underground of the soul, are not enemies. They are disguised teachers. Each one calls us back home, speaking the language we most resist hearing. Liberation doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small gestures of presence, when you say no and your body sighs in relief, when you turn off the noise and hear your own heart, when you remove the mask and realize that no one ever really wanted your character. They wanted you. When you enter the silence, and instead of fear, you find peace. Watts said, "You are a function of the universe, not a thing separate from it." And perhaps that is the true awakening, remembering that no part of you needs to be fixed in order to deserve love. There are only parts asking to be seen. The dangerous places will continue to exist, but now you know that the door was always open. None of them have locks. Only habit, and habit can be unlearned. So breathe, Feel the ground beneath your feet, and before this video ends, make a small, silent vow. Today, I return to myself. If this video touched something within you, share in the comments which of these places you're leaving behind today. And remember, the inner sanctuary is not far away. It begins exactly where you decide to stop running.